"Sorry, this meeting is for important team members only," Vince announced with a practiced smirk, his hand firmly gripping the conference room door behind him. 12 colleagues averted their eyes, some suddenly fascinated by their tablets, others examining their coffee cups as if discovering them for the first time. Through the narrowing gap, I spotted my quarterly analysis projection on the screen, the one I'd sacrificed 3 weekends to perfect, the door sealed with a soft click that echoed through my entire being. I stood alone in the hallway. My graduate degree and 15 years of experience rendered meaningless in that instant. The polished nameplate on the door reflected my image, a senior analyst reduced to an outsider. Something crystallized inside me as I turned away. That closed door wasn't merely a barrier to a meeting. It was the final confirmation of a systematic campaign to erase me professionally. I straightened my spine and walked back to my desk, knowing this moment would someday be remembered very differently. Before I dive deeper into how I transformed from excluded team member to the architect of the company's future, could you take a moment to tell me where you are listening from? Because the journey I'm about to share completely redefined my understanding of professional resilience, and I promise you'll want to hear every detail of what happens next. My name is Amelia Winthrop. At 37, I carried a solid reputation for rehabilitating struggling departments across 3 different industries. People described me as analytical, observant, and relentlessly solution-focused. Colleagues often remarked that I could extract order from absolute disorder if given a laptop and a quiet room for 72 hours. What remained invisible to my professional circle was the foundation beneath my composed exterior. A woman who had navigated childhood in a household where academic excellence was the only acceptable currency. My father, an economics professor who immigrated with nothing but textbooks and determination, taught me that every system eventually reveals its pattern observed long enough. My mother, a research librarian who cataloged information with reverent precision, showed me that knowledge carefully gathered redbones power when deployed at exactly the right moment. I joined the company 4 years earlier, bringing my expertise in operational restructuring to a technology division that hemorrhaged both talent and money. The previous team lead had departed suddenly, citing strategic differences with upper management. I later discovered these differences centered on Vince Teller's habit of repurposing others' innovations while constructing elaborate narratives to explain departmental shortfalls. My arrival initially sparked enthusiasm. The department needed fresh perspective, and my track record spoke for itself. The first 3 months unfolded precisely as expected. I observed, analyzed, and developed targeted recommendations that would streamline our product development cycle while reducing redundancies across team functions. During my 4th month, I presented my first comprehensive analysis to the department. The room hummed with genuine interest as I outlined potential improvements. Even Vince, our department director, nodded appreciatively while scribbling notes. That evening, he stopped by my workspace. "Impressive insights today, Amelia," he said, perching casually on the edge of my desk. "But let's hold off implementing any changes until we've discussed them more thoroughly. Some of your suggestions might be too ambitious for our current reality." I agreed, not yet understanding that discussing thoroughly meant indefinite postponement. Over the following weeks, meeting invitations that should have included me never arrived. When I inquired about the oversight, Vince's response became a familiar refrain: "That meeting covered aspects outside your current focus area," or "We needed to keep the discussion limited to historical context you wouldn't have." By month 6, the pattern had solidified. Strategic discussions happened without me. Decision-making circles tightened to exclude my voice, yet my analysis reports were still requested, only to disappear into an administrative void, never referenced. Again, in company planning, "We need you handling the baseline analytics," became Vince's constant explanation. So I maintained spreadsheets nobody consulted and compiled statistics nobody cited, watching as our department's performance steadily declined. Each quarter told the same story: we were losing market position, yet Vince claimed credit for minor victories. While attributing significant failures to market forces beyond our control, the exclusion became increasingly blatant. Once, I arrived early for a department-wide meeting to find my name missing from the printed agenda. Another time, I overheard Vince telling a new hire, "Amelia handles our data entry and basic reporting for strategic guidance. You'll want to speak with Lane or Dominic." Both Lane and Dominic had joined the company 6 months after me and possessed half my qualifications. Most telling was when our division launched a new operational initiative and Corpana fragments of my original proposals, but distorted and implemented without the underlying structural changes that would make them successful when these partial measures failed. Vince referenced them in subsequent meetings as evidence that innovation for innovation's sake damaged productivity. I considered leaving, updated my resume, scheduled networking coffees, yet something kept me in place, a combination of stubborn determination and instinct that opportunities sometimes arrive disguised as defeats. That instinct proved correct one Tuesday evening. The office had emptied, except for the cleaning staff and me. I remained to complete an unauthorized analysis, tracking the direct relationship between excluded expertise and declining department outcomes, essentially documenting how systematic isolation of key personnel, specifically me, correlated with negative performance metrics. Interesting approach. A voice remarked from behind my shoulder. I turned to find Liliana Harlow, our CEO, standing beside my desk, her attention fixed on my monitor. I hadn't spoken directly with her since my initial hiring interview, just personal. Research? I explained, resisting the urge to minimize my screen. Show me, she said, pulling up a chair. For the next 2 hours, I walked her through not just the correlation analysis, but my comprehensive vision for departmental restructuring. I showed her the integrated workflow models, the redundancy assessments, the talent reallocation plans, and most importantly, the projected performance improvements each change would generate. When I finished, Liliana remained silent for several moments. How long have you been developing these analyses? She finally asked. About 10 months, I admitted, though most haven't been reviewed by management. Her expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her eyes. Meet me tomorrow morning at 6:30, my office. Bring everything you've developed. The next morning initiated what would become our secret collaboration. For an hour each day, before the office populated, we refined my analyses into a comprehensive restructuring plan. Liliana expanded my access to company data, enabling me to extend my assessment by just our department to the entire organizational structure. Continue your normal routine, she instructed. Say nothing about our discussions to anyone. So I maintained my outward compliance. While my exclusion intensified, the whispers grew louder, the sidelong glances more obvious. My departmental colleagues began bypassing me entirely for information I was specifically hired to provide. Most revealing was watching Vince appropriate fragments of IDs overheard me discussing with junior team members, presenting them in leadership meetings as spontaneous insights. These borrowed concepts, divorced from their supporting framework, yielded minimal benefits, further reinforcing his narrative that our department needed stability, not innovation. Through it all, I documented everything. Each excluded meeting, every dismissed suggestion, all instances where my work was repurposed without attribution, every performance decline that followed ignored recommendations. This documentation became part of the restructuring evidence Liliana and I assembled each morning. My professional isolation reached its peak 3 months before the restructuring announcement. Our department faced a critical deadline for a product improvement initiative, despite having developed the original framework for this exact scenario. I received no invitation to the emergency planning session. When I appeared at the conference room regardless, Vince intercepted me at the threshold. Amelia, we're handling specialized technical aspects today, he explained loud enough for everyone to hear. We need you focusing on your regular reports. I'll circle back if we need those statistics. That evening, I submitted my latest analysis to Liliana with a note. The attached performance projections show our department will miss quarterly targets by approximately 22% following today's strategic decisions. When the quarter closed with our department underperforming by 23.8%. Liliana sent a one-line response, *, the plan moves forward in exactly 8 weeks. Comprehensive restructuring, based on a year-long efficiency study conducted within our organization. On the massive screen behind her, the first slide appeared, operational realignment, maximizing expertise, and eliminating systemic inefficiency. This analysis, Liliana continued, identified critical weaknesses in how we distribute decision-making authority and utilize our internal expertise. Most significantly, it documented how excluding key personnel from strategic planning directly correlates with decreased departmental performance. Vince shifted in his seat. his expression still reflecting polite interest rather than concern. Before revealing our new organizational structure, I want to acknowledge the architect of this entire initiative, Liliana said, someone whose potential was systematically overlooked, whose expertise was deliberately excluded, and whose patience has been nothing short of extraordinary. She extended her hand toward my seat. Amelia Winthrop, would you join me? The room went completely silent as I walked to the front. Hundreds of eyes tracked my movement, but I focused only on Vince, whose expression transformed from confusion to dawning comprehension. For exactly 13 months, Liliana continued as I took my place beside her. Amelia has conducted the most thorough organizational analysis in our company's history, while simultaneously documenting how her expertise was systematically excluded from decision-making processes. The screen changed to display a dashboard showing metrics I developed, tracking every meeting I'd been excluded from, alongside corresponding performance declines. This evidence, Liliana explained, demonstrates an undeniable correlation between expertise exclusion and operational failure. Today, we correct that systemic error. Insert YouTube-style call to action. If you're finding this story of workplace justice compelling so far, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the notification bell to ensure you never miss our unique stories of professional transformation and accountability. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives that so many of us experience, but rarely discuss openly. Now, let's continue with the moment that changed everything. The reveal that left my manager speechless. The screen shifted to display the new organizational chart. My name appeared prominently, not just above Vince's, but heading a newly formed innovation division with direct authority to evaluate and restructure every company initiative. Gasps rippled through the audience as people processed the implications. Effective immediately, Liliana announced, Amelia will lead our innovation division with a mandate to implement the comprehensive restructuring plan she designed. This position reports directly to me and carries oversight authority across all operational units. I watched Vince's facious understanding settled over him. His expression cycled through disbelief, shock, and finally a stunned resignation. He clutched his ceramic company mug so tightly, his knuckles whitened, then suddenly released his grip. The mug crashed to the floor, shattering into jagged pieces that scattered across the polished concrete. The sound amplified in the silent room. Sorry, he mumbled, not looking at anyone. As you can see, Liliana continued, gesturing toward the organizational chart. This restructuring preserves all existing departments, but realigns reporting relationships and decision-making authority. She clicked forward to the next slide. Most significantly, we've identified departmental expertise has been systematically excluded from critical decisions. In these cases, we've implemented specialized accountability measures. The screen now displayed what I had privately termed the Exclusion Impact Dashboard, a real-time tracking system showing departmental performance against implementation of previously rejected recommendations. For example, Liliana explained, focusing attention on one particular section. Our technology division will now implement strategic initiatives that were previously dismissed despite clear evidence supporting their adoption. The spotlight of organizational attention centered squarely on Vince's department and specifically on Vince himself, who seemed to be shrinking into his chair to ensure proper implementation. Liliana continued, each affected department head will participate in weekly public accountability sessions overseen by the Innovation Division. These sessions will track progress while documenting why these measures weren't adopted sooner. Despite their proven effectiveness, I maintained my professional composure, but inside, a quiet satisfaction bloomed as 13 months of systematic exclusion transferred into 13 points of structural reorganization, each addressing a specific instance where my expertise had been ignored with measurable consequences. I'll now turn the podium over to Amelia, who will outline the implementation timeline. As I stepped forward, I surveyed the room. Expressions ranged from shock to curiosity to calculation as everyone assessed how this reorganization would affect their positions. My gaze settled briefly on Vince, who stared at the broken pieces of his mug on the floor, a fitting visual metaphor for his shattered assumptions. Thank you, Liliana, I began, my voice steady. The restructuring will proceed in 3 phases over the next 6 months. Today, I'll outline the first phase, which begins immediately. For the next 40 minutes, I detailed the restructuring with precise clarity. I avoided any hint of personal vindication, focusing exclusively on organizational improvement objectives, efficiency metrics, and accountability mechanisms. The presentation I delivered had been rehearsed dozens of times in early mornings with Liliana refined to ensure it conveyed authority without appearing punitive. When I finished, Liliana returned to conclude the session. Department heads will receive complete implementation packets this afternoon. The first accountability session takes place next Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you for your attention. As the assembly dispersed, colleagues who had previously ignored me now approached it with congratulations, sudden recollections of how they'd always appreciated my perspective. I acknowledged each person cordially while noting their previous positioning. In my mental organizational map, Vince remained seated as others filed out, still staring at his broken mug. I considered walking past without acknowledgement. It would have been justified after months of deliberate exclusion. Instead, I approached him directly. Vince, I said quietly, my office. At 3 p.m. to discuss your department's implementation requirements. He looked up, his expression unreadable. Your office? Yes. The former strategy room on the executive floor. You'll receive the official notification shortly. He nodded, then bent to gather the ceramic shards of his mug. I watched him briefly before walking away. The time for conversation would come later in a setting that reinforced our new professional reality. By noon, my belongings had been relocated to my new office, a glass-walled space 3 times the size of my previous workstation, positioned between Liliana's suite and the executive conference room. My departmental access credentials had been upgraded to executive level, granting me unrestricted access to company data systems and planning platforms. At 2:55 p.m., my new assistant, Devin, informed me that Vince had arrived. I instructed him to wait 5 minutes before showing Vince in, not from petty revenge, but to establish the boundary of executive timing protocols. When Vince entered at precisely 3 p.m., I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Thank you for coming. He sat cautiously, his normally confident posture noticeably diminished. I didn't have much choice, did I? We always have choices, Vince. They just come with different consequences. He glanced around the office, taking in the expanded space, the executive furnishings, the view of the city skyline. This is quite the promotion. It's not a promotion, I corrected. It's a complete restructuring based on documented performance analysis. There's an important distinction. I opened a digital folder on my monitor, turning the screen so he could see the contents. This contains every instance where recommendations I provided were dismissed without proper evaluation, followed by the resulting negative performance metrics. His expression tightened. You've been building a case against me all this time. Not against you specifically. I've been documenting systemic inefficiency across our organizational structure. Your department simply provided the most compelling evidence of expertise exclusion. I selected a specific file and expanded it on screen. For example, last February, you rejected my proposal to integrate cross-functional teams into the development cycle. 6 months later, project completion times increased by 34%, while quality assessments decreased by 28%. He shifted uncomfortably. Market conditions changed. We're responding to external factors were accounted for in the analysis. I interrupted, bringing up a comparative chart. These columns show adjusted projections incorporating market fluctuations. Even with those variables, the gap between projected outcomes using my recommendations or actual outcomes following your alternative approach remains statistically significant. For the next 40 minutes, I methodically walked him through the implementation requirements for his department. His role hadn't been eliminated. That would have been predictable revenge. Instead, he would remain as department head, but with a critical new responsibility: implementing every recommendation he had previously rejected while documenting why these proven approaches hadn't been adopted earlier. Each week, I explained, you'll present your implementation progress and historical context analysis. The executive team and department heads. The first session is Monday morning. He stared at me, comprehension dawning. You've designed a system where I have to publicly admit I was wrong, repeatedly. I've designed a system where evidence-based decision-making receives appropriate organizational priority. I corrected, your personal experience implementing this system will provide valuable context for our ongoing structural improvements. His face flushed. This is sophisticated revenge. You're making me the public example of failed leadership. I closed the folder on my screen and met his gaze directly. No, Vince, you made yourself the example through consistent, documented Choices, I'm simply ensuring the organization learns from those choices. After Vince departed, I spent the remainder of the afternoon meeting with other department heads. Some approached our new dynamic with professional pragmatism, others with thinly disguised resentment, and a few with genuine enthusiasm for the restructuring. My final meeting concluded at 7:30 p.m. The executive floor had emptied, except for Liliana, who stopped by my office doorway. "How does it feel?" she asked. I considered the question carefully, validating, but also somewhat hollow. She raised an eyebrow. "Hollow?" "After achieving exactly what you worked toward for over a year." "The goal was never personal vindication," I explained. "It was creating a system where expertise receives appropriate consideration regardless of title or politics. That work is just beginning." She nodded. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this position. Don't stay too late. Tomorrow will be demanding." After she left, I stood at my office window, watching city lights illuminate against the darkening sky replayed. In my mind, not with triumphant satisfaction, but with analytical assessment of organizational reactions and implementation challenges ahead. My phone chimed with a text message from my sister, Delea. "Well, did the restructuring happen? Details, please." I typed back, "Yes, everything proceeded as planned." "Talking about it feels strange." Her response came immediately. "Because you won, or because winning doesn't feel like you expected?" I smiled at her perceptiveness. "Both. We'll call tomorrow." The morning accountability sessions became the defining rhythm of the company's new operational structure. Each Monday at 9 a.m., department heads presented their implementation progress in the executive conference room, with dashboards displaying real-time performance metrics against historical baselines. Vince's first presentation, 3 days after the restructuring announcement, became a pivotal moment in establishing the new organizational culture. He arrived impeccably prepared, with comprehensive slides detailing his implementation of cross-functional teams, the very approach he had dismissed 18 months earlier. As you can see, he explained to the assembled executives, preliminary data suggests a 12% improvement in development efficiency after just 1 week of implementation. I waited until he finished before asking the accountability question. "Given these positive preliminary results, please explain why this approach wasn't implemented when originally proposed last year." The room went silent. Every executive present understood this moment would define how seriously the accountability measures would be taken. Vince hesitated, visibly calculating his options. I watched him consider deflection, minimization, even potential reframing of history. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. "I rejected the proposal without adequate evaluation," he stated flatly. "I believed maintaining established workflows will preserve stability during market uncertainty. That assumption proved incorrect and cost the company approximately $4 million in lost efficiency over 14 months. His direct acknowledgement shifted the atmosphere in the room. Several executives who had prepared similar deflections for their own accountability sessions visibly reconsidered their approach. "Thank you for that assessment," I responded. "Next week, please include specific decision points where alternative evaluations have identified this error earlier." As weeks progressed, the accountability sessions transformed from dreaded confrontations into productive analysis forums. Department heads began voluntarily identifying historical decision or spore being asked, recognizing that transparent assessment strength rather than weakened their leadership position. Most remarkable was the transformation within Vince's department. As he implemented each previously rejected recommendation, performance metrics improved dramatically. Team members who had been silenced under the previous structure began contributing innovative solutions. Even Vince himself demonstrated unexpected adaptability, gradually shifting from reluctant compliance-ado active engagement with the new operational framework. By the 3rd month, our company's overall performance indicator showed significant improvement across all divisions. External analysts noted our unexpected market resurgence, attributing it to strategic realignment and innovation acceleration. Industry publications requested interviews about our transformation methodology. During this period, my relationship with previously exclusionary colleagues evolved in unexpected ways. Some maintained careful distance, Viewing me as a potential threat to their positions, others attempted to establish retrospective alliances. Suddenly remembering how they had privately supported my ideas, a few approached with genuine acknowledgement of their participation in the exclusionary culture, seeking to understand how they could contribute more effectively to the new structure. Most interesting was my evolving dynamic with Vince. 6 weeks into the accountability process, he requested a private meeting in my office. I've been reflecting on my leadership approach. He began once seated. The performance data is undeniable. Your recommendations have transformed our department efficiency. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I need to acknowledge something, he said, maintaining direct eye contact. My dismissal of your expertise wasn't just poor judgment. It was intentional marginalization case. I perceived your analytical capabilities threatening my authority. His admission surprised me with its directness. That's a significant realization. The accountability process forced me to examine it, just what decisions I made, but why I made them. He continued, I've identified a pattern of expertise exclusion extending beyond just your case. He placed a folder on my desk. This contains my analysis of 5 additional instances where I dismissed valuable input from team members who presented authority. Challenges. I've included the estimated impact and corrective measures I'm implementing. I reviewed the document, noting its thorough self-assessment. This goes beyond your required accountability reporting. Yes, he agreed. Because addressing only documented requirements will continue the same flawed approach that created our problems. Real improvement requires examining the underlying patterns. That conversation marked a turning point in our professional relationship. While we would never become friends, we established a functional dynamic based on mutual recognition of expertise boundaries. Vince eventually became one of the most consistent advocates for the accountability system. Using his own experience as a case study in leadership adjustment, 9 months after the restructuring announcement, Liliana called me to her office to review our comprehensive performance analysis. The results exceed even our most optimistic projections, she noted, examining the quarterly comparison charts. Every division shows double-digit improvement in core metrics. Employee satisfaction scores have increased 32%. Market valuation is up 28%. She closed the report and regarded me thoughtfully. You've accomplished exactly what you set out to do. The system design worked. I acknowledged. People respond to structural incentives when we reward evidence-based decision-making and transparent accountability. Behavior aligns accordingly. The board has approved the next phase expansion. She informed me you'll have resources to implement cross-divisional integration you proposed. I nodded, already mentally mapping the implementation sequence. There's something else, Liliana added. Vince has requested a transfer to our international division to establish the accountability framework in our overseas operations. This surprised me. His choice or a directive? Entirely his initiative. He submitted a detailed proposal demonstrating how his experience implementing the system uniquely qualifies him to adapt it for cultural variations in our global offices. I considered the implications. Transferring him removes a visible reminder of his previous approach. Yes, Liliana agreed, but it also leverages his legitimate expertise in a context where his historical patterns are known and monitored. The accountability system you designed isn't about permanent punishment. It's about optimal expertise utilization. She was right. True organizational transformation required accountability for past failures and pathways for future contribution, creating a system where events remain perpetually associated with his previous mistakes will ultimately limit organizational growth. Approve the transfer. I decided, with continuation of the weekly accountability reporting structure and quarterly review of implementation metrics already done. Liliana confirmed he begins next month. Later that afternoon, I encountered Vince in the executive corridor. He nodded in acknowledgement. I understand your international proposal was approved. I said double quotes yes. I believe my experience has value in our global context. I agree. The perspective gained through direct accountability implementation strays unique insight. He hesitated, then offered a genuine observation. The system you designed is remarkably effective, not because it punishes past mistakes, but because it creates structural incentives for better future decisions. That was always the goal. I responded. Individual penalties create temporary compliance. Systemic accountability produces sustainable transformation. He considered this. A year ago, I closed a conference room door in your face. That single action ultimately transformed our entire organizational Structure, no, I corrected. That action was merely the visible symptom of a systematic problem. The transformation came from documenting the pattern and designing an evidence-based alternative. As he turned to leave, he asked one final question. Did you know how this would unfold when you started documenting the exclusion patterns? I thought about those lonely months of meticulous documentation, the quiet mornings analyzing organizational dysfunction, the gradual construction of an alternative system. I knew exclusionary practices inevitably produce operational failure. I answer the specific path to correction emerged throughout systematic analysis. That's the difference between reactive revenge and strategic restructuring.